Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dave's Delights. And as always, I'm Dave, and it's a delight to have you here with me on my show. Today, I have a guest coming over who has special dietary needs, as it happens, is diabetic. So, as we discussed earlier when I did a vegetarian dish two ways, so you could have both vegetarians enjoy it and people who eat meat, and rather than having two separate meals prepped. Tonight, what I'm going to do is something that is really more specifically for a diabetic diet, because it's not just sugars you got to worry about, it's also carbohydrates. So we need to limit those as much as possible. And a lot of times that means rice is out or potatoes are out, and obviously lots of sugar is out. So this recipe is more vegetable and protein based, and you try to limit as much of the sugars, other than obviously there's going to be natural sugar that you can't avoid, but we limit it down. And I'll give you the numbers at the end of this as far as what the actual net carbs are. You can think about it like keto. It basically, keto is a diabetic's diet for everybody. And tonight we're going to do a spice-seared salmon. So really it's baked, but what we're doing at the top of the salmon with the spices will help sear off the top, even though it's in an oven. And then we're having that with a Greek-style green beans. So it'll be like, the salmon will be over the green beans. And that goes down to plating. And then we'll have a salad on the side. So first off, I want to talk about the ingredients. The top ingredient is salmon. This is just over a pound of salmon. And typical salmon portion is about 4 ounces. And there is a pin bone right there, which I thought I got them all out, but occasionally you'll miss some. It's best to remove them, but a lot of the times you can't get them all. Just kind of pay attention to these. Usually they are removed already by the time you get the meat, but you never know. You want to check through. But this was one piece. I had one fillet that I broke down into 4 to 6 ounce pieces, kind of like the size of the fish. You end up trying to just make them more even is the most important thing. But a portion is usually about 4 ounces. I like to eat a little bit more, so for me, a portion is 6 ounces. But you want to break these down rather than buying individual pre-cut pieces, because the more times that your fish market has to cut it, the more expensive it is. This will be more price conscious than just buying the individual pieces, and you already have a knife, you already have a cutting board. It's not that hard to do this. But we get those, and we leave the skin on in this recipe, although you could certainly remove it if that's what you wanted to do. But the the recipe is going to take care of taking the skin off for us. You need a half cup of yellow onion, chopped. You need 4 cloves of garlic, minced. You need a 15-ounce can of diced tomatoes with the juice. You need 2 tablespoons of fresh dill, chopped. This is going to be a garnish at the end, but oh man, there's just nothing like fresh dill. A cucumber is just a pickle is just a cucumber that sold its soul, and the devil is dill, as Mitch Hedberg used to say. You've got 4 cups of green beans. Now, this morning at the market, I bought some fresh green beans to cut up and cook for this. And when I was breaking them down to get them from full size to half size, I found out that even though the date is perfectly good on the bag that I had, because there weren't any fresh pick your owns, the date was good, but the beans were rotten. So luckily, I have canned cut beans already. So these are basically cooked already from the canning process. So I'm just going to do things a little bit differently in the final cook, because I don't need 10 minutes of cooking to get this to soften up. I just need to heat them through. But we'll get to that when we get to that part of the meal. But I just wanted to let you know that you can do it both ways. You don't have to do fresh vegetables if you have the fresh veg if you can't get it. Canned will work just fine. Frozen will work just fine. If it's frozen fresh, you want to use it as if it's fresh. And if it's frozen cooked, which I have seen, but usually it's more if it's canned. But in that case, you want to just heat them through. We need a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, which, if you didn't know, was 4 tablespoons. Sorry, this is the lemon juice. 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. And then you're going to need 2 tablespoons of olive oil divided. So it's 1 tablespoon and 1 tablespoon. And then you also need 1 tablespoon of what's called a Baharat spice. Now, what Baharat is Oh, and it smells amazing. To make a batch of it, is 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, 2 tablespoons of ground, and it's all ground, 2 tablespoons of ground ginger, 2 tablespoons of ground nutmeg, 2 tablespoons of turmeric, and then a half teaspoon of ground pepper. You mix all that together, and I need 1 tablespoon of this for the recipe, and then, because if you're going to make a bunch, you want to have it. I then put this in a container so that I can save it for later, because this is going to be a good spice for a lot of things. Pardon me. And then we have our salad components, which are pretty straightforward. Tomatoes, cucumber, and we have and obviously salad itself. And I've got a dressing, which I've bought. I can make my own, but I had this one that I got at a farmer's market, so I'm going to try to use it tonight. It's a vinaigrette. Okay, so the first thing we got to do, we've already prepped the salmon up. We're going to get the vegetables ready because this all happens pretty quick. The salmon is going to be in the oven for about 10 minutes to 10 to 15 minutes, and the vegetables are going to be in for about 10 to 15 minutes, but there's a little bit of prep work in the meantime. So you can consider this like a half-hour meal. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the cooktop, and I'm going to cook the vegetables. So I will see you once we get over there. See you soon. And we're back. Now the pot here, it's a big saucepan, and it is coming up to temperature. And I'm going to add 1 of my tablespoons of oil to it. You can tell it's warm by how that's sizzling. Roll that around a little bit, and we are going to add in our onions. Now we have to stir these until they turn translucent. It's going to take 3 or 4 minutes. And this is a big chop because these we want to have still look like onions when we're plating. If you don't like onions that much and you want to hide them, by all means, you can make them smaller. But the flavor is going to be important to the overall completed dish. So this is going to take about 4 minutes. What we're going to do is I'm going to cut and then come back because the rest of the stuff comes together much faster. I will be back to you once these are ready for the next ingredient. Now I have this cooking on medium heat, and that took about 3 minutes. And you can see they're now just slightly browning, and they're definitely all translucent. So it's time to add my 4 cloves of garlic that I have all minced up. And we're going to stir this till it gets fragrant, which can take about 30 seconds to a minute. Oh, man, and that smells good already. And now that that's already browning nicely, I'm going to add in my tomatoes with their juices. And now I'm turning it down to medium-low because I don't want things to burn. But that's going to bring those tomatoes are going to bring the heat down a bit. So you just want to adjust it. We just want to get this so that it's warm through and nice and simmering. We don't want to boil it. We don't want to cook it so that it burns the bottom of the pan. Now I've got to add half of my salt, so about a 1/4 teaspoon. Yeah, that's about right there. And you can see this is already heating up. And now I'm going to do the green beans are going to go in. And because these are basically pre-cooked, I'm not going to have to cook this for very long. So I'm going to stir this through. And I'm going to let it get up to temperature. And then I'm going to put it on low, and I'm going to simmer it for just a couple of minutes. Now, if you have fresh green beans, I want you to simmer it for at least 10 minutes or when they're soft, whichever one comes first. But you can see this is back to simmering, so I'm going to switch this to low heat. I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm going to let this cook for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then I'm just going to set it aside on a simmer burner like as low as I can just to keep it warm, so that way it's ready for the meal. And then we are going to go switch over back to the other camera angle so that I can start putting together the salmon. See you in just a moment. Okay, now here we are back here with our salmon. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've washed my hands, so I'm good to go to grab things. But I'm going to grab this fish, and I'm going to place these portions of salmon on a baking sheet that I've foiled, and I've greased the foil. Now, I have a little trick that I used to do where I would not grease the foil, and that way the skin of the salmon would stick to the aluminum foil, so that way I could more easily remove the skin from the flesh. But honestly, if you cook it right, it just slides off. So I'd rather have the thing not get stuck to it. But it's a choice. You can do it either way. All 4 portions are on. And I'm going to use my napkin because I'm going to wash my hands after this. But all this stuff is going to be fish related, so I'm not too worried. I have my lemon juice. And I have the other tablespoon of oil. And I'm going to put the oil into the lemon juice. And that's not going to blend very well, obviously. So I'm going to have to... Alexa, stop timer.
2-minute timer stopped on sunroom echo dot.
Well, thank you, Alexa. Sometimes it talks back to me. So I'm mixing that oil and that lemon together. And I'm going to brush the top of all these salmon fillets. And I'm trying to get heavy coverage. Because this will actually, the lemon juice will actually start like lightly cooking the flesh before it even gets in the oven with the acid, like a ceviche. And then the oil will help with the searing and the browning of the top of the skin. There we go. That looks pretty good. And it will also help us stick this seasoning on. So I've got the Baharat spice, which I'm going to liberally spread onto this fish. I'm actually going to use once I get it laid out, I'm going to use my little brush to kind of brush it around. Man, this is a very intense smell. It is going to be very spiced. The nutmeg and the ginger, the cinnamon's there too, but the nutmeg and the ginger, you can really smell those. Yeah, there we go. Aiming for kind of even coverage, but I don't need to have too much of it. Otherwise, all you'll taste is the spice. There we go. So now you have salmon that is ready to go into the oven. Now we have a 425 degree oven. Now it's up to temperature, and these are going to go in for 10 minutes. Now what you're looking for is them to be flaky. Now, obviously, salmon are all living creatures, so they're a different size. Each of these fillets is going to be a different size. So you're looking for the outer meat to be flaking, but it's still to be lightly translucent right in the middle. So that way you haven't overcooked it and made it too dry. But if it's still looking just like this and it hasn't started flaking at the tops yet, let it go for a little bit longer. So your oven might be a little bit not as hot as mine or hotter. So you got to keep a look on it. I set it at 10 minutes. And then from there, I go minute to minute until it's ready. So we're going to put this in the oven, and I will be back to you as soon as it's out. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to be back to you with something else that we're doing while it's in. So I'll see you shortly. So one of the things about having people over is you can never depend on them to be there when you want them there. So what I like to do is get everything prepared, ready to go, and any sides that need to be cooked, get them cooked. And then when my guests arrive is when I'll start making the main thing, unless it's obviously a meal that has to take hours. But something like this, it only takes 20 minutes to prepare. What I do is I get everything ready, and then I make the charcuterie board. That way people have something to entertain themselves, a little appetizer. But when you have a diabetic, you can't do the normal thing. Crackers aren't really that good. So what I do is I get an almond cracker, and I use cheeses and meats. And then, of course, because you got to have some reason to use your silver spoon that you had for when you were born, I take that and I get a little bit of my good German mustard, and I'll put that in my mustard wells so that people can do a little bit of dipping. And I'll set out some toothpicks and some appetizer plates, and that'll be out there so they can enjoy this while they're waiting for the main course from me. It gives me the opportunity to get everything together and then still have hot food rather than reheated food, which I like a lot better. It's always better when it's coming straight out of the oven rather than having it be reheated or room temperature. So take it as an advice, but I always make sure I have some charcuterie around and usually some crudité, otherwise known as vegetables, and a dip. I'll use hummus or I'll use tzatziki. We'll talk about that in a later episode because I'm sure I'm going to do gyros eventually. But yeah, this is going to be out. My guests are arriving shortly, and then I will be able to put the salmon in, which it's now in here because they are actually here. Once it comes out, we're going to do our final plating, and I will see you back then. Hopefully they enjoy the snacks. Okay, the timers went off and the salmon's looking good, so it's time to use our bare hands and get this fish out of the oven. Oh, wow, yeah, that looks and smells amazing. So put a trivet down on the table. So even though I've got stone here, I kind of don't like putting things that are too hot on. And I'll give this a little tilt up. So you can see the color's changed on the fish. Oh, it smells wonderful. It looks good. It's flaky. You can see that it is pretty much done all the way through. I mean, I'll know when I cut into it, but I can tell by looking at it and experience that this is ready. And that was 12 minutes. So 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15. Depends on how thick your fish is. And you are going to set it however you need to make it work. And I'm going to move my beans here as well. And here comes my plate. Now, you know I like to do this with a salad so that I can plate around it. Now, the normal rule of thumb for me is I'm going to do, like the salad or other vegetables are going to be 25%, 50% starch, and then 25% protein. So I kind of like quarter out the plate. But this, you definitely going to want to have this on top of the green beans. So we're going to take a spoonful of this green bean mixture. And I'm using a slotted spoon, so I'm not going to make it all juicy on the plate because I don't need all that tomato juice on it. And then here, as you can see, that is now making a nice little platform, maybe a little bit more, for my fish to land on. And now, so I don't want the skin. So I've got a nice big spatula. And the tricky part here, remember, wash your hands, is getting up under the skin of the fish so that the salmon comes away just like that, and you still have the skin left on the table. And, I would wipe that. I'm going to wipe that plate before presentation. You've got some salmon. You've got some green beans. I've got some dill. And poof, there's my salad. And look at that. We have a dinner fit for a king, a diabetic king. So, hopefully you guys have learned something from this. This is a heck of a recipe. I hope you try it at home. I hope you think about your guests when you're having guests over who might have special needs. I know I do, and I try my best to think of others for that very reason. Send me comments. Let me know what you think. Make me suggestions. This was a suggestion. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you, Mario, for being my guinea pig on this. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that bell so you can hear when I plant new things on this channel. And I hope to see you again soon. I love my time with you, and I hope you like your time with me. Have a nice day.